Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Ji ayanu, pakhair agale, ni hao, chunushumme, washmale. Ohaya gazaimas, guten Morgen, hola, bonjour, privyet, kaifa hal, hale shumachatore, ahlan wasalan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabia, bhalli kare aaya. Hosh Galdin and Ayo. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning into PT World. You're certainly watching World this morning alongside my very well learned colleague who happens to be Miss Haja Sati. I happen to be Shahzad Hassan Khan, and we hope and pray that everybody out there is doing wonderfully well and that you're ready to kickstart your day and your week with us. But first things first, hello Haja, how are you doing today?
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for introducing me, Shahzad. So there was some news doing the round, especially in the Hollywood studios about it, and it's about how Tom Cruise has proposed a movie in which he will, spacewalk into the space station. That's quite, something very adventurous, and it would have a very sort of an effect on his nervous system because there's zero gravity there out there, right? And we've also seen him scaling the skyscrapers and hanging off the cliffs and doing all sort of stunts. But yeah, I think this thing is, way too much, but we will be very much waiting for this.
I think he's already ready for it, given the recent film he has done, he's been flying planes. Imagine that, somebody is so dedicated towards their career and passion and work that, that it does not really matter to them whether it's going to hurt them or, God forbid, he might not even be able, if, God forbid, he lands into an accident or something of that sort. But yes, then at the same time, I think it's the environment which provides them with the opportunity. Imagine if you want to take a ride in a fighter jet over here in Pakistan. Can you do that? No, it's very costly for us. We cannot use it for such luxurious rides. Hey, you know what? We want to shoot a film. Take our jet. That's not happening. Because it took us a longer period of time to procure those jets, and we really need to be kind of careful for all of those things which are, short in resources. So I think for Tom Cruise to get that enabling environment, in the first place, he's proved his mettle, no matter what happens. And this yet again is going to be such a stunt where, he's going to gather a lot of attraction for the cinema houses whenever the movie is going to come out. But I think I'm keeping my eyes onto the Avatar coming. I think it's going to be released this year around. And Avatar is such a film, ladies and gentlemen, you can watch it every time. The work has been done phenomenally well. So let's see what this movie will bring to us, and I'm actually anticipating that this movie is going to be better than the previous one.
Right. And this idea has just been proposed. I don't know when the work starts or whether it will be accepted or not.
Do you think Elon Musk is going to take him to the space? Do you think it's NASA who's going to do this?
The amount of the money Elon Musk might take him on to the space, it's not out of the question when it comes to that. But yeah, moving on to our top stories aspect of that. So Pakistani rupee is getting some strength, and that is a reason to rejoice. You're right, Shahzad?
Yes.
So Pakistan's volatile rupee became the world's best performing currency in the week ended on Friday, as it made the largest gain of 3.9% over the 5 working days to rupees 219.92 to $1 on the expectation of significant foreign currency inflows. The rupee remained the best performing currency on a week-on-week basis. In 1 week, rupee appreciated against dollar by 3.9%, and at the end of the week closed at rupees 219.92.
And you know what, that the people are actually calling it the Dar effect, and we're glad that our finance minister Ishaq Dar is back, and he's taking on to things the way they should have been due diligently. But then, obviously when the Prime Minister of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan appreciates their team and the finance minister in particular, I think there's something where we need to give credit, and wherever credit is due, ladies and gentlemen, it's due. And Pakistani rupee, Haja, happens to be the only currency which is actually doing better when we talk in terms of the dollars too. Number one. And number two, obviously for all of those people who've been buying a lot of dollars, ladies and gentlemen, now they're coming back to invest into real estate. I think it's high time that you invest in real estate as well.
Wow.
I think that's
quite a financial advice. I think you can turn to Shahzad when you need a financial advice, because he's really good at it.
Just very recently I went through quite a lot of losses. I had to, pay something, I was purchasing something. And what happened was that when I went to sell all of those properties, the only thing which I got to know was that people have actually invested massively in dollars. And as soon as Ishaq Dar Sahab was back, they already knew that, they cannot sustain that dollar. So it was back in the market. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the simple thing. But obviously, there might be a lot of other things at the back of it. Moving on.
Okay, so country's first ever national program for children who are suffering from autism and mental illness is here. So Federal Minister for National Health Services, Regulation and Coordination, Abdul Qadir Patel, on Saturday announced that federal government is going to set up country's first ever national program for children who are suffering from autism and mental illness. right? And UNICEF is in partnership with the government. And every year, Early Intervention Therapy Unit is offering therapy services, assessment and training for children from 1 year to 12 years of age under the supervision of international behavior and analysts. A team of therapists, psychologists and special education needs coordinator are available to take care of the little one. And earlier this year, Maroof International Hospital also started this program. Minister said the data will be collected from a nationwide survey of each children who are suffering from autism and mental disorder, and added that United Nations International Children Emergency Fund is ready to cooperate with the Health Ministry for the betterment of autistic and mentally ill children.
Exactly. Wow, great initiatives have been taken, and this is the need of the hour, where parents most of the times are in a denial. And not just that, half of the time they do not even know whether they, God forbid, the child is autistic or not. And once they figure it out, they actually are not willing to share it with the rest of the family. The treatment needs to be taken holistically and inclusively. We need to make sure that each and every member of the family is going to come together in making sure that first, obviously, that the life of the parents is not having that toll or taking that toll onto their mental health too, which is why now moving on, where Hajra, there's another important day. There are two important days which are being observed today. Number one, obviously we want to talk about it, which is World Homeless Day, where now the world really needs to come together and think about all of those people who are homeless. So World Homeless Day is being observed today to draw attention towards the needs of homeless people and provide opportunities for the community to get involved in responding to homelessness. The inaugural World Homeless Day was made on the 10th of October 2010. The purpose of World Homeless Day is to emphasize on hands-on aid that is sensitive to local needs, while being aware of the global problem of homelessness and feeling solidarity with other charity workers around the world. Imagine, I think I would certainly want to live in a world where, we have an extra room for people who are homeless, probably something of that sort. But over here, unfortunately, I think in the recent times, we certainly have seen families where they do not even have an extra room for their younger or elder brother. There are disputes within the families. And, there's only one thing which I remind my viewers and myself every single day, and that is that this life, ladies and gentlemen, is going to go like this. So I've lived 35 years. I don't know how many more years I might have. And I'm thankful to Allah Almighty for every single day, but I look forward to sharing whatever Allah has given me so that Allah can give me more.
Alhamdulillah for, having such kind of thoughts. But then again, this brings to a very important fact that the global inequality has increased so much that rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poor. And after the pandemic, this inequality is even more evident with that.
But I have a very fair argument on this.
Okay.
So imagine this is something which I was listening to just yesterday.
Okay.
And Ashfaq Ahmad Saab said that, when we are born, we are born equally. Nobody's actually born, in terms of inequality as well. So you might be born to a rich dad or a poor dad.
True.
People might have read that book.
Right.
But imagine it is on to you to grow as much as you want to.
Yes, but then it also matters that how many opportunities you are exposed to. So, for example, if someone is living in a
create opportunities. How can you be exposed to opportunities? Nobody will give you that opportunity. So it is totally on to you.
So you are living in a, for example, in a maybe Islamabad, which has a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
But if you are living in a far-flung areas where you do not even have a basic infrastructure where you can go out there, so how do you think, that you're able to do that? Or maybe you are so much enchained by such sort of system where, if you want to break those shackles, and there's so many barriers to that, and there might be life threat to you. So how can you make sure?
So I certainly want to talk about it, but yes, obviously we have our guests waiting.
Right.
And we have a very different topic to discuss, which I believe is the most important one in today's time. While we are growing up, I never knew what challenges these 30s and 40s are going to bring to me.
True.
And, it's really important that you kind of sit down with somebody, consult whatever your insecurities are, talk about them. Because once you start to talk about things, only then they are going to get better. If you're going to think that you're a Superman yourself, hey, you know what, even Superman died in the last film. So imagine that we really need to kind of work towards that. But I'm not sure whether we're going to play the package as of now, but I'm going to introduce my wonderful guest because, ladies and gentlemen, it actually happens to be World Mental Health Awareness Day today on the 10th of October. And when we talk about mental health, obviously everybody kind of now knows the importance. We've been speaking about it for the 9 long years we've been doing this morning show. So the theme this year is make mental health and well-being for all a global priority. How do we do that? It's something we will be talking about. There are a few interesting things which Haja has picked up on. there are a few interesting things which I've picked up on, and you really want to listen to them. So for that, we have experts over here inside the studios with us. So ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let me introduce our superheroes today who are going to help us be superhuman. So first up, obviously, we're very lucky that we've been joined by consultant psychiatrist, President British Pakistani Psychiatrist Association. Wow, that's something which, ladies and gentlemen, actually makes me feel happy that they're on our show. He's Dr. Shahid Latif. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Walaikum salam. Good morning, Shahzad, and good morning, Hajra.
How are you?
I'm not too bad. Thank you. How
Thank you very much for joining us. It's
Thank
wonderful
you.
to see you right on top of your energy. Wonderful. And alongside him, we are lucky, ladies and gentlemen, that we've actually been joined by somebody who happens to be a registered psychotherapist, clinical hypnotherapist from Maroof International Hospital. He is Mr. Bilal Shadani. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Walaikum salam. How are you guys doing?
Absolutely perfect. Thank you very much for joining us on top of our energy. So let's get started. Hajar, do you want to get started?
Okay, so I read an article in the Guardian which mentioned that, so for example, when we talk about the depression, and nowadays there's a lot of debate around the mental illness and a lot of people are talking about it, and they said that when we sort of club together a depression into the mental illness category, so you are considering it as a disease, right? And you want to destigmatize it so people can actually go and take out that what's wrong with them. But then again, when you do that and you're saying that there is some sort of chemical imbalance inside your body that is hampering your ability to work normally, so you are ignoring a lot of structural issues that are actually put in place that are restraining your abilities. For example, Shahzad and I were having a discussion. So for example, our colleagues or friends in different organizations might say, okay, so we do not have a pay increase in organization. It has been so many years. So if you go to a doctor and if you get some sort of medication for that, so that is actually not the solution to that. The solution is that they should have a pay increase when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So how do you define that? Yeah. So how do you define that?
That's a $1 million question, Hajra,
Right.
and it's a very important one. Again, there's a myriad of components to your question, and you're absolutely right. I think the most important thing to understand, especially at its World Mental Health Day, to offer what we describe as psychoeducation. That is education around the psychological well-being. Now, the first thing that we always need to do, that, like you've said earlier on, a lot of people, for example, Shahzad had mentioned finances. All of us in our life, at some stage, or maybe on a daily basis, we do experience adversities.
True.
Now, does that adversity mean that we are mentally unwell? If we wake up on the wrong side of the bed and we have a row with our spouse, or find out that we've lost our job, or during COVID periods, loneliness, isolation, etc., does that mean that we've suffered from mental illness? Not necessarily. So we must not, number one, medicalize everything. That's
Right.
really, really important.
Right.
If we do medicalize everything, what we'll end up is that we'll try to attempt to, as the practice is in Pakistan, end up on antidepressants, which is not always a good option.
Right.
Because if you haven't got depression and you're giving something, what it says on the tin, it won't work, you'll set up people to fail. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, however, if individuals are experiencing certain symptoms earlier on, which can snowball into becoming worse, then you have to categorize what those symptoms are, what the constellation of those symptoms are, because early intervention has much better prognosis. There's no, scientific evidence suggests that early intervention, recognition. That's why this day, and hats off to PTV for doing this show. That's why awareness of mental health is so important. So picking up those early signs, it's important to have those interventions. Those interventions, again, depending on mild, moderate, severe anxiety or depression, doesn't necessarily still have to be medication. But we try to have a quick fix, which is not always the right approach to take.
Exactly. And thank you very much for putting it this way. It's very rarely that you're actually going to go see a doctor who's actually going to put it in other words.
Right.
Because usually they'll be like, hey, come in, you need medication. Where are you going? So I think that the practice really needs to change. And people need to put in a little more research whether which doctors to go to. Please make sure that you do that for yourself, for your well-being. Now, moving on to you, Mr. Bilal. Obviously, I think that's a very important question, and we do have such structural issues over here in Pakistan. In fact, I would want to talk in perspective of how, women really being harassed at their workplaces. So imagine all of that is going to take a mental toll onto their health. Right. That, number one. So how do we address these structural issues? Because, they certainly do not need any medication. Number two, what they say is that due to pandemic, the people were in isolation. And yes, we being social beings, we realize the importance of that hug. We have another amazing guest over here inside the studios flying around, enjoying their day. But yes, what I was trying to say over here was that, I have missed those hugs with my friends amidst those times. Right. Obviously, I'm in that age where, I just cannot very openly go to my father and be like, Abbu ji, jab bhi to dein. Kabhi nahi. Wohi sharma jayenge ki ye beta kidhar aa gaye. But then what happens is that, so friends not being around, that social circle not being around, people who are going to support you not being around, and then at the same time, the healthcare providers not being around. I think it was a chaos, and then it took a lot of, it brought to life a lot of mental health issues. How would you want to address that?
So, for starters, I'll touch on the harassment one in a moment. But in terms of what COVID has done, it has been havoc not only for individuals who were away from...
Even doctors?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you had the uncomfortable benefit of seeing anyone work in the COVID ward, I think you would agree with me, CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, was a very real consequence of everyone working there, not just regular PTSD, CPTSD. So, and the thing is that because there was such a huge glut of them, self-medication also becomes a problem, because if you don't have access to the professionals, oh, what's the problem? I'll take an Alp, I'll be fine, it helps me sleep. Yeah. And then it just, like you said, it snowballs further on because you're not appreciating what happens as a result.
True.
In terms of the effect of COVID, I mean, we can't deny that it's a novel situation, and we're still learning. I won't lie, we're still learning because online services skyrocketed. Therapy in particular, psychotherapists and counseling therapists, their services became absolutely invaluable because no amount of medication is going to help someone stop being lonely. You see, because unfortunately, or fortunately, humans are social animals.
Exactly.
We need our social time.
True.
To touch on what you said initially as well in terms of harassment and those kind of situations.
Structural issues, kind of.
Yes. Now, with that, the first thing, which is going to sound rather strange, but I'll say it, is to have healthy boundaries in place, personally.
Right.
Because even if your structures are weak, if you are clear on what is or unacceptable behavior in your presence, typically other people have to respond. Whether negatively or positively is a separate issue, but they are forced to respond to what you're doing, because as long as you are consistent in your behavior, then there's a very clear message that X behavior is unacceptable, and there are consequences. Most people stop at saying this is unacceptable, but nothing happens afterwards. If someone is being harassed, I mean, let's take #MeToo.
Right.
Created a huge fuss, and there were consequences.
Right.
As a result, now there's a lot. Any would-be harasser thinks twice, because there's that small little disconcerting thought that maybe I'll get outed.
Right.
You see, so having healthy boundaries is the first step towards infrastructural change, I would think.
And this is exactly what I want to dive into. So Dr. Saab, imagine that we were talking about having those healthy boundaries. But imagine people who are actually needful, because we only have two categories of people in Pakistan and our society we live in. Either you're needful, either you're not. So there's no thin line in between, there's no gray area. So the people who are needful, imagine that they really need to make sure that, their both ends meet. They need to work. Some people obviously are widows. Some people do not have that much opportunity for another job as well. So what they do is they start to compromise with those boundaries. Once you start to compromise with your boundaries, that's when you're certainly helpless. And I believe that a person who feels helpless is a person who's going towards depression, anxiety, and all of these issues. So how do you think that the people who are needful can actually have those healthy boundaries in place?
Absolutely. First, it comes to the basics, and the basics are like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Needs,
which are the very
wants.
very, very basic things: food, shelter. Like Bilal was saying, it's the communication, etc. Very, very basic stuff. The second thing is, I think it's important just to take a step back before these conditions develop.
Okay.
Because what happens is that if they are consistent disappointments in life, whatever they may be, whatever baggage one may have, it may lead to a condition which we call learned hopelessness or learned helplessness.
Okay.
So even if the conditions are rife, because of our previous experiences, because of the trauma we have experiences, for example, if somebody says, okay, I have to do this, but they don't find those conditions in that particular environment, if it happens 2 times, 3 times, the 4th, 5th time, what will happen is no matter if all the conditions are there to succeed, they will already have developed that model in their mind, that negativity, those emotions and the structure and the schema in their mind of being hopeless. So they will end up, most probably, highly likely, failing. Okay. So we have to remember that when we are in a situation where we ask people to, and we give them all the tools to succeed, and they still don't, it's rather than saying that they have failed, we have to remember let's go a little bit back and see, because remember, it's different strokes for different folks.
True.
One size does not fit all.
True.
And when we talk about things like depression and anxiety, we have to move away from the label and we have to start focusing on the individual.
Exactly, and which is why I know, Haja, that even you have a question, but it's going to actually give me a perfect bridge to kind of move on to what I wanted to talk about, because this is something I go through myself. I'm very happy in the first place because, you know, I have always been talking about all of my insecurities and fears on television ever since, and I think that once you start to talk about them, only then you can recover from them as well.
Right.
I don't know whether what Dr. Saab is going to say about it, but imagine, so there were things which I wanted to do in life.
Okay.
And whenever I would do them, you know, I would always be happy, and in that happiness, I would do some stupid things too. So unfortunately, what used to happen was that the next day when I would wake up, I would start to curse myself that why did I do that? I really need to be disciplined in order to kind of achieve my goals. And this is something which I've learned from people who are highly successful around me.
Okay.
And eventually what happened was that for the last 1 month, I think I have not repeated the same mistake, and I'm a very happy man. Even today, I think for my audiences who are out there, they can judge that too. So imagine connecting what you said is, how do you think that, you know, we can take it away, God forbid, if you're doing it too much to ourselves? And where do we draw that line? I want both of you to answer that. Please, let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. You see, I was listening to a very interesting discussion yourself and Hajar was having earlier on about opportunities.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about, in the West, we talk about diversity, equality, inclusion. It's part of the ethos. That's what they make, which actually means we must give everyone the opportunity. But there's something we need to move away from there. It's not about giving people the opportunity only, or equal opportunities. I actually personally think, this is my view, I don't think that works for all. I think what you have to do is give everybody opportunity of giving them the right tools to succeed.
True.
Because what might be my tools may not be your tools, or might not be your tools, or anyone's tools there. So we need to understand individuals' tools, what makes them succeed. And remember also that someone, for example, there are a lot of doctors, therapists, psychologists who come from Pakistan who come to practice in the West. Many of them don't succeed, and the reason why they don't succeed is because
it's not a part of their ethos.
It's not part of their ethos, and it's a totally different setup, pathway, etc. And vice versa. For myself, I might come to Pakistan and may not be able to succeed there because I don't understand some of the practices here. Now, if I'm not giving those tools or I'm not set up for that, so you see, the idea is, it's again, I would say that, you know, the opportunity with the right tools. But again, I would say, it's for me also to understand how I find those tools. So resource is very, very important.
Wonderful. What about you, Bilawat?
See, the thing is that you talked about success. One thing that we can't deny is that success is a sliding scale. Your success might be someone else's failure.
True.
And vice versa.
True.
And I think that in the pursuit of tools, as you said, you know, one tool doesn't fit all. I would also like to highlight that a lot of individuals, when they think about success, they think about what they want. They don't think about what they need.
True.
You see, and the fundamental difference between want and need, needs are based in survival, without which you experience physical pain. Wants are, you know, experiences which create convenience, but their absence doesn't create pain. So, but as children, we're constantly told one thing: sweetheart, what do you want? Where do you want to study? Where do you want to go? Who do you want to marry? Want, want, want. And because we hear it so much, we become, you know, conditioned, very much like learned helplessness. We learn this conditioning of what do you want? Needs are not something which are typically highlighted. So I think it's more important, before measuring success, you should be looking at what it is that you need to be successful first, not what you want.
Okay.
It's very easy to be successful if you have, you know, $1 million a month.
Yeah.
But there's no guarantee that that success will last. There's no guarantee, because it's better. I mean, let's put it this way: if you do the same thing 100 times, you'll get the same result 100 times.
True.
You know, so it's very important to change up what you're doing.
No, but I have a slight disagreement over here. You know,
Sure.
they say that for the best workers all over the globe, is because that they have worked 10,000 hours at least, you know, to
Okay.
get to that level.
Okay.
So imagine if something we're doing 100 times, we might do it differently 100 times too.
Yes.
And sometimes you can get some good results, sometimes you might not even reap the same benefits.
Okay.
So I think it's a go for everything, that, hey, you know what, give it a try.
You're right. And to add on to that, the thing is that every time that you do inch closer to success, build on that, rather than focusing on how many failures you've had, because ultimately failure is a learning lesson.
True.
It's not why did I fail, it's what did I learn.
I mean, it's
Okay.
how society thinks of failure.
Yeah,
Also a fair point.
and also, I mean, you were having a talk about the needs and the wants, and I mean, the way our system is geared up is that we are unable to differentiate between what exactly is our wants and then what are our needs. So, coming back to Dr. Shahid, I really wanted to ask you, why do we see there's so much depression, anxiety, I mean, mental illness in the rise in our society globally? And we were having a discussion off camera about how there's so much depression in the fame when it comes to that, right? And there was this new movie that came onto the Netflix about Marilyn Monroe, and it was all about, you know, how famous she was, but yet again, how disturbed she was when it comes to her lifestyle, right? Right. So I really wanted to have your take on that. So what is wrong that we are doing? So we are feeling so much depression and anxiety. Is it our lifestyle inherently which is wrong, which is leading these sort of diseases to come into our life?
Listen, you've mentioned Marilyn Monroe, and you would think, we would all think that Marilyn Monroe, why would she get depressed?
True.
This is a lady who got everything in life that she wants. I can tell you one reason why she got depressed. The dopamine inside the neurochemical.
True.
You see what happens, there are two different kind of chemicals in your brain. One is called dopamine, which gives you instant gratification.
True.
Okay, for example, likes on my Facebook, Instagram, etc. You know, you get a buzz, you get that
Can you
feel-good
get an
factor.
autograph?
Can you get an autograph? Yeah, when you get all these things, this is an instant buzz. When you get dopamine regularly and for a little while, you don't get it, you have a sudden crash.
True.
It happens to all of us.
Okay.
All of us in the studio, everyone in this room, and even someone living in a gaon or a village, it will happen to them because their happiness, their khushiyan, etc. is so different from ours.
Right.
So whatever gives them. There's another one called serotonin.
Right.
Serotonin is more longer term, where we build on things, and there's a less chance of you crashing. With dopamine, we do. For example, people who are addicts, addicts could be to anything, name it, social media, illicit substances, alcohol, relationships, or whatever you want.
Right.
So those are, when you get addicted to something, that's where dopamine is, the instant, the feel-good factor. There are two things here. Number one is the problem with, the main thing is, when we talk about depression, we can think about all of the symptoms. One of the core features for all individuals is self-esteem.
Okay.
If our self-esteem is low, our inside core, there's a fundamental flaw. That's what we need to work on. Medications do make a difference of the other offshoots of symptoms that do have an impact, offshoots of.
Right.
The other thing that we have, and this is what I tell all of my patients, I said, if you can't remember anything else that I'm going to tell you, just remember this. Facts are facts. You can't change them. You have to accept them.
Right.
Problems, by definitions, have solutions.
Right.
And try to understand the difference between the two. What is a problem? What is a fact? If it's a fact, accept it and move on. If there's a solution, if there's a problem, look for the solution.
Which is why I think it's about time that we kind of draw a line in between mental dysfunction and mental illness too as well. But before we do that, we actually want to share something very amazing our team made for our viewers in 46 different countries. Please go ahead, take a look. Once you guys will come back, I really need to ask whether, having artificially kind of going towards the higher end of dopamine or serotonin, whatever we call it,
Right.
Is it going to help us whenever you're crashing? I think that's the question. Let's go for a break.
Mental health plays a huge role in your general well-being. Being in a good mental state can keep you healthy and help prevent serious health conditions. A study found that positive psychological well-being can reduce the risks of heart attacks and strokes. On the other hand, poor mental health can lead to poor physical health or harmful behaviors. Depression has been linked to many chronic illnesses. These illnesses include diabetes, asthma, cancer, cardiovascular disease and arthritis. Schizophrenia has also been linked to a higher risk of heart and respiratory diseases. Sleep problems. People with mental health conditions are more likely to suffer from sleep disorders like insomnia or sleep apnea. While conditions like depression, anxiety or bipolar disorder may lead to sleep problems can also make existing mental health conditions worse. Access to healthcare. People with mental health conditions are less likely to have access to adequate health care. It may also be more difficult for people with mental health conditions to take care of their physical health. How to take care of your mental and physical health? Exercise is important for keeping physically fit, but it can also help improve your mood. A diet high in fruits and vegetables and low in processed sugars or fats can make you feel better physically and mentally. A good night's sleep is around 7 to 9 hours for adults. Meditation, Deep breathing and focusing your thoughts can all help when you're feeling stressed. Focus on positive emotions and events rather than negative ones. Getting others to help with difficult situations can also reduce the burden that you feel.
Obviously, when we are going to talk about, very sorry, but when we are going to talk about positive emotions, negative emotions, imagine it's man-made. So imagine that, one smell, we say, this smells so nice. One smell, we say, that's a bad one.
Right.
Why can't we take the bad smell as a good smell? This is something which I want to ask. Can we do that technically?
Well, it's a matter of perception, isn't it?
Yes.
Life is 99 perception. Your perception of events do not necessarily coincide with anyone.
So the question, the answer which I'm looking forward to is, do you think that when perceptions change, you can actually avoid mental illnesses?
Absolutely you can.
Wow.
Absolutely you can. That's because, look, you can interpret a cut on your hand as world-shattering, or you can interpret it as a minor inconvenience.
Okay.
The question, or rather the answer, as you very rightfully said, is if there's a problem, there's always a solution. The question is not so much, why did this happen? The question is, what can I do now that it has happened?
Yeah.
And
Damage
ultimately,
control.
essentially, yes. But the thing is that it's very easy to slip into this mindset of, now what am I going to do? Now what am I going to do? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And like, again, as you said, this, shall we say, repeated exposure to this thought pattern makes it easier, and you slip into a comfort zone.
All right.
Which then becomes the perception going forward.
Exactly.
You see, so it's a slippery slope.
And the
Right.
difference between mental dysfunction and mental illness?
Illness typically can be organic, meaning it's present in the body, whereas dysfunction can be from external factors.
All right.
So anything that's from an external source, such as stress, work stress, home stress, life stress, versus organic, meaning, for example, with depression, an actual chemical imbalance, overabundance or underabundance of certain chemicals.
All right. So now I believe that it's going to be the most important question which I was looking forward to, that I'm going to ask you, and that is that, God forbid if there's something wrong with our blood chemistry, we go, they withdraw our blood, they tell us, hey, you know what, your white blood cells are up there, your hemoglobin is as such, you have a broken bone, you go, you get an x-ray done, you can see that bone.
Right.
With mental illnesses, I don't know, I might be very short on this, but what I wanted to ask was, very clearly and out loudly, is that, with mental illnesses, you give us a multiple choice questionnaire. We were not able to fill them when we were in school. How do you expect us to fill it right? And then on top of that, you label us according to our answers, that whether we are mentally ill or not. How can chemical imbalance be checked with a questionnaire?
One of the worst things you can do is base an analysis simply on a questionnaire. That's
True.
the worst thing you can do to a patient. You'll be failing the patient. It can be used as part of the assessment tool, but there's nothing more powerful than one-to-one discussions, listening, teasing out, and people who come with experience, who work in people with mental problems or psychological instability at times in their lives, can pick that up, and it's an art form which they should need. There's a reason why we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what we do is, as therapists, as psychiatrists, we listen less and we talk more. If we learn to listen more and tease out the in-between, when you say read between the lines,
Yeah.
as a psychiatrist and as a therapist, we have to read between the lines.
Sir, andaza lagana padta hai. I mean, do you go for a fluke at times as well?
You have to. You have to at times, because some it's a hit and miss. And when you talk about using certain investigations, the patient, when they go through investigations for physical health, like they say in Urdu, unki aadhi bimari gaib ho jati hai. Just by doing that, because there's an intervention.
True.
In psychiatry, unfortunately, psychology, well-being, you don't get that. So you have to work even harder to manage that patient. So one-to-one intervention, tools like scales, etc., filling in question is very, very important. But that follow-up, because you see, if you take a cross-sectional history of someone, you'll get half of the story. You have to have a better understanding by taking a longitudinal history. You have to take a collateral history for other people who know them, if the patient gives permission. So it's not, again, it is basically going into multiple elements. And if you don't do all of that, you will be failing the patient.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in addition to that, at times, Hajra, whenever we've been in conversation, because we interview quite a lot, I've seen, I think, people's eyes kind of speak quite a lot. I've met a lot of people where they do not have any shine in their eyes, and when you look into their eyes, it feels like as if, God forbid, they might be going through a tough time. Do you take that under consideration, whether how the body language is of a person?
All the time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's just part of the job, because I jokingly say this to a lot of people, that when they come in session and they're like, wait, why aren't you talking? And I said, you're doing all the talking just by being here.
True.
I'm not listening to what you're saying, I'm listening to what your body is saying.
Wow.
You know, because just the way that they're sitting is enough to tell you if they're submissive, defensive, hostile. The shine in the eyes, that usually indicates hopelessness.
Do you get scared at times that, anybody, God forbid, with mental illness can get hostile at any time?
Well, see, I mean, if
How
you
do
would
you
like...
save yourself?
I worked in forensic settings. I worked in prisons, and you get this all the time. Interestingly, people who have a forensic background are more in secure settings. It's safer than someone when you're in your clinic with someone who you know very little about. And one of the things I really wonder, especially for general practitioners, is they have this stethoscope and their hammer over there, and you see patients. It is very unsafe. It's very unpredictable. Thank God, up till today, I haven't been but I know colleagues where they've been whacked by patients. And the other thing is, one needs to also preempt that there are ho sakta hai. Number one, reading through their history, and number two, you see patients can come with anger management problems, and when you start talking to them, you can start picking up where things are slightly getting out of, and then it's basically to simmer that down. The most important thing is, when you talk to patients, you have to be very careful, making sure that they do not unbaggage all their problem. If they unbaggage and the therapist or the psychiatrist is not able to rebaggage and put it together, it can make the patient very unstable.
True.
Okay, so delving into the problem of the social outcast, right? So they do not exactly fit into the society. And I was reading an article that was very critical of the psychiatry, and they said that sometimes what do they is that the social outcasts are always or sometimes clubbed into the, under the oppressive or very authoritarian institution of the psychiatry. But then again, there was another article that talked about how there is an oppositional defiance disorder in some people. So what exactly is the difference between the two? As someone who's an expert in this field, please enlighten us.
So the thing is that over here, oppressive psychiatry umbrella is a very charged term.
Right.
That already makes it quite antagonistic.
Right.
I would say that, look, social outcasts, again, what everyone tends to ignore, and I know I'm generalizing, but I'll use it anyway, is that every case is unique.
True.
There is no such thing as a one-size-fits-all diagnosis or therapy treatment.
Right.
For anyone who's an outcast, they might be an outcast because of substance abuse. They might be an outcast because of adverse predilections. They might be XYZ, XYZ. Each one needs to be managed on their terms.
Right.
What a lot of people misunderstand about mental health management is that we don't do it on our terms. We take them, we listen to them, and we work with them. We tailor it. The problem is that it's very easy to say that, oh, go to a psychiatrist, you're depressed. Have Cipralex, have Citanu, have alprazolam. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
It's very important to understand. And for those who do come under that umbrella, typically it will also be because there is some sort of medical chemical imbalance.
Right.
That's why they end up there. And once they're under that umbrella, it's not that they'll stay there forever. There's always secondary treatments in the form of therapy or other necessary interventions.
Right.
So how do you deal with them? On their terms. And the problem is, for a lot of people, like you said, it's very overwhelming for someone on the outside. I can say from personal experience, because I work very heavily with suicidals, they love to talk. They love to talk. And the magic word here is catharsis.
Right.
They get to vent it out to someone who doesn't judge. Two parts: venting, no judgment. You see, because we don't know their journey. So how can we possibly decide if it's right or wrong?
Exactly.
You see, it's a sliding scale again.
And you imagine that we live in a household where, our previous generations have always kept their problems to themselves.
Right.
Puttar kisi ko batana nahi hai.
Yes.
Puttar, you do it yourself. Tu bada munda hai, tu mard hai, and all of these things, which I believe is a stigma itself in the first place. That, you praised your kid not to share it with anybody because it feels like as if it's a, in-house problem. But now what I want to ask is, this is something which you touched upon slightly when we started with the show. And that is that what are those earliest symptoms that, which you can really figure out whether me, myself, can analyze that, God forbid, I might have an issue and I really need to go and consult somebody. And then how do you think, God forbid, if it has gotten out of my hands and individual hands, the family can recognize, and then what should we do? Let's talk it out so that people can actually look for solutions.
Very good question, Shahzad. Okay, I'm going to try to make it as simplistic as possible. There are three core features of depression, or which can lead to clinical depression. Number one is low mood. Number 2 is consistent, and we're using the word consistent on purpose, tiredness. And number 3 is loss of interest in things that one previously enjoyed. In medical terms, we call it anhedonia. Now, these are the 3 core features. All of them may be present, 2 of them may be present, or 1 of them may be present.
Okay.
Around these, we have a lot of other features. Those features
Right.
may be sleep, appetite, energy, concentration levels, libido, confidence, self-esteem,
But
guilt.
then again, I think we did experience some sort of symptoms, especially in the COVID, right? So does that mean that we were depressed and we need to have the medicines when it
No,
comes
no,
to
no. That's
that?
very Hajra. That's what I'm coming to at the moment.
Right.
Now, these features have to be, number 1, present consistently.
Okay.
Number 2, they must have disabled us for a prolonged period in
Okay.
our relationships,
Okay.
work,
Okay.
finances, relationship with our parents, people becoming withdrawn. So it has to be consistent, and it must have an impact on our day-to-day functioning. If it has not had an impact on our day-to-day functioning, these symptoms are mentioned. Our viewers probably think, I get these. People say that all the time.
True.
Because all of us, everyone in this room, will get these symptoms. But that doesn't mean that they are clinically depressed.
True.
Number 1, they have to be present consistently.
Okay.
Number 2, they must have impact on other areas of our life consistently. If they're not, then it's highly likely it's not depression. It's probably dysphoria people going through, and it's short-lived.
Okay.
So that's the difference between the two. If individuals are, then although we were saying earlier on, we were talking about not to medicalize everything. If it is consistently and is having an impact, advice would be to seek professional help. And it's highly likely that depending on mild, moderate, severe, you may need, and medication does work. I want to highlight that. Antidepressants do work. There is a protocol to give them. Unfortunately, not just in Pakistan, even in the West, they are misused. And
Right.
when medication is misused, majority of the time they don't work. There's myths about them, they're being addictive. There's myths about them that I'm going to be hooked on them for life. That's not true. It is the responsibility of the doctor, of the psychiatrist, to educate the patient how they should be taken, how long they should be taken for, when to stop it, how to titrate them upwards, how to wean off slowly. That's what I was
Exactly, and in addition to that, since you mentioned about the West, so this is one example which I want to share. And imagine, so this is the kind of importance we kind of bring to, or where we want people to kind of realize that this is important. So imagine that even if there's a prisoner who's in the prison and he or she really needs to go to the court,
Right.
the courts are actually going to order a psychiatrist to come in.
Right.
And God forbid, if the psychiatrist decides that he or she is free to go or probably can live a healthy life,
Right.
it's totally going to be on that psychiatrist, and they might be even called. So imagine over here within our own courts, we do not have such a system where, for people who are not mentally well, when they're brought to, the courts, God forbid, if the judge feels that, he or she is free to go, they're free to go and they can create a havoc, a chaos within the society. But now, in addition to what Sir mentioned over here, how do you think individually we analyze?
Analyze ourselves?
Yes.
Well, I would like to say for starters that please don't go to Dr. Google. Dr. Google wants to kill you. Dr. Google in every situation, fever, itches, rashes, cancer. So no. Dr. Google, please don't self-diagnose for starters. To build on this, go to professionals. Look, there is a stigma with mental health because the perception is that they make us crazy. So I would like to highlight that, look, crazy individuals, don't look for solutions. Anyone who's looking for a solution cannot be crazy. You get to the threshold of a psychiatrist or a therapist, you've effectively proven that you cannot be crazy.
True.
And it's very important to highlight that because searching for answers doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means something is still functioning.
True.
But choosing to stay away because ye log kya karte hain, or whatever stigma you want to apply on it,
Exactly.
that proves already that you have a bias. If you have something wrong with a joint, you go to orthopedics or rheumatology or whomever. If you have a mental health issue, you have a selection of individuals. You have your psychiatrist, if you think it's serious. You have your therapist, if you think you'd like to explore first.
True.
And both work in conjunction with each other.
Exactly.
Psychiatrists will refer to therapists, therapists will refer to psychiatrists. It's a joint system.
Exactly.
You see, but unfortunately, as you pointed out, that there's a responsibility that exists, which unfortunately in this country is lacking. It's very important to highlight that if you go to a therapist, they should be licensed. That you should be able to ask them, what's your license number? And if they say that we don't have a license, we have a degree, they're academic, they're not clinical.
True.
Then they're involved in research.
Thank you very much for
Right,
saying that,
right.
because imagine Hajra over here, finally we are talking about rheumatology too as well. People don't know, didn't even knew what rheumatology was. So for my spine issues, I always went to orthopedic. Now finally I'm going to a rheumatologist and I'm feeling much better. But now,
Yes.
very quickly, sir, what I wanted to ask you was that even in the initial bit of the program, you spoke about psychoeducation. Please enlighten us on that, and how can that help
And
us?
also, you know, I would really like to talk about a healthy lifestyle and what it entails. So do you think the sort of food that we eat has a bearing
Yeah.
upon how do we have a healthy lifestyle? For example, a lot of people I do see are binge watching or having a junk food when it comes to that. I am sometimes addict of that when it comes to that.
Everybody
And
is. I actually
yes.
finished the entire salsa sauce last night alongside nachos. Yeah.
Okay, okay. So this is not something healthy that we are doing, but then we are very addicted to it. I don't know how
Yeah.
to wean that thing off, but I really wanted your take on it.
And can love be our savior? प्यार बचा सकता है हमें?
True.
बिल्कुल बचा सकते हैं. It's a protective factor. Love is actually a protective factor. देखिए, absolutely you're right. I think if we want to manage,
Right.
we have to take a holistic approach.
True.
Holistic approach, we can't, if we really want to be successful and have a healthy mental well-being, we've divided into what we call biopsychosocial, but I would actually add spiritual. Very, very important. Bio means medication, psycho means psychological, therapy, etc. Social means your social, how you manage socially, including diet, healthy,
Right.
exercise, fitness, how you breathe. Breathing is so, so important. We don't know how to breathe. We really, really don't know how to breathe. I hired a fitness trainer a few months ago, and he said to me, forget about lifting weights, forget about anything else, Shahid. What you need to do is you need to relearn how to breathe, because the most important muscles in your body
Right.
are not these ones, it's your intercostal muscles between your ribs, and
Right.
even more than the core muscles and your diaphragm. If you can do that and take deep breaths every single day for about 15 minutes, he said your day, and I've been doing that and I've been feeling more fresh.
That's even
Right.
a sunnah. Do you know that?
It's a sunnah,
Prophet
yes.
Muhammad sallallahu
Sallallahu
alaihi
alaihi
wasallam
wasallam.
actually used to tell his companions that always take deep breaths. And whenever I take deep breaths, I feel sleepy. I always want to sleep. You know, your brain just relaxes as well. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Saab. Thank you very much, Shudani Saab, for being with us. Lovely to be in conversation. I think it has to be one of the best shows we've ever done.
Right,
You know,
right.
And the cause behind is that, you know, the people out there who might be suffering through all of these problems and issues, and we're not able to handle them because of
Right.
isolation.
Right.
I think we are your family, and we were here for you today, and we are going to be here for you every single day, inshallah.
Right. So adding into this conversation, I really wanted to point out, because Dr. Saab also mentioned about the spiritual aspect of that. And Shahzad, the system is geared in such a way that we're always running for the material things, right? We want to earn a lot of money, we want to earn that. And that is why, especially in the West, which is a very overly capitalist society, we see there is a lot of depression. Okay, they're earning a lot of money, but then there is a void in their life, and they don't understand that. And that leads into the depression, anxiety, whatnot, and mental illnesses and whatnot. So I think the faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is what keeps you floating. And it is a very important thing that we need to have a connection with nature, because yesterday I was going through a shopping center and I was feeling the warmth of the sun, and I felt that, you know, such a long, it's been such a long time since I had that sort of interaction with the nature, and I'm feeling that sun. And then I started wondering that when sun is in its wrath, it is so much harsh, but then that is the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you can see his existence in so many things out there.
And thank you very much for saying that, because that's exactly what I felt just yesterday, because, you know, now the temperature is coming down.
True,
And that sun
true.
actually felt great, and we
Right.
felt happier.
Right.
But, you know, imagine that, you know, let me put it this way. Mark Wahlberg gets up at 4 in the morning. Kevin
Right.
Hart wakes up at 4 in the morning. All of these amazing people.
Okay.
And they exercise. Imagine you wake up for Fajr, do all of that 15-minute
True,
exercise,
true.
you'll feel better. And
Right.
imagine World Health Organization recognizing that it's your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional
True,
health
true.
which contributes to your well-being. So, ladies and
Right.
gentlemen, please make sure that all of these 4 elements
Right.
are going to be on top. You
True.
put yourself first,
Right.
and then everybody comes
Also cater
next.
for your spiritual
Yeah,
needs,
if you're
because
not
they are
going to-
very much important when it comes to that.
If you're not going to love
Right.
yourself, you cannot love anybody else. So please make
Right.
sure you love yourself first, so that you can spread and share that love. Make sure that you stay positive. If you're having a difficult time, we have people like Dr. Saab over here and Mr. Shadani. You can go to them, ask them. They'll be the ear and you will be the tongue. So please make sure that you made sense every time you went to them as well. Till the next time, look after yourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, please write to us on our Facebook page, which happens to be with the name of
World this morning.
on Twitter,
World this morning.
on Dailymotion,
World this
on
morning.
YouTube.
World this
And the
morning.
fabulous recipe is going to be at 4 today in the day. And till the next time, look after yourselves, look after your mental health. And yes, for all of those homeless people out there, make sure you have a space or probably a kumbal or a blanket for them to give away, so that they can sleep the way you are sleeping or you've been sleeping. Shukr alhamdulillah. Thank Allah Almighty every single day. Till the next time, look after yourselves. 1, 2, 3. Good morning.
morning.